1, 2, 3, 4. This ain't a song for the broken-hearted. Bow, wow. Hello everybody, I'm Em, and welcome to Green Screen Entertainment. Anybody who's watched Canadian television in the last decade or so has probably heard of the CBC program known simply as Murdoch Mysteries. Based on the book series written by Maureen Jennings, Murdoch Mysteries is a show about Detective William Murdoch of the Toronto Constabulary in the late 1890s and early 1900s. He solves every single murder presented to him with the help of his friends and colleagues, and the plot lines unfold around them. I'm not sure whether to classify this as a historical drama, a mystery show, some slice of life drama, or all of the above, but yeah, probably all of the above. Beginning in 2008, this show was popular enough to get 14 more seasons since its debut, as well as a regular viewer base of about 1.4 million people per new episode, and apparently a web series in 2011, which surprised the heck out of me. With season 15 in full swing at the time of writing this, as well as wanting to take a break from top lists, I figured, what better time to do this review? So, don your thinking cap and put on your formal wear. This is Green Screen Entertainment's review of Murdoch Mysteries. So let's start off with... Let's get the ultimately superficial stuff out of the way first. The show is set in the 19th and 20th century, so if you design clothing for the characters that's unfitting for the times, it not only breaks immersion, but it makes the world or time inhabited feel artificial. Not even suspension of disbelief is going to rescue the show from a poorly chosen wardrobe. Fortunately, the reverse is also true. The costumes are very suited to the era, so props to the tailor and the costume designer, because those costumes looked incredible, really on point, and they don't detract from the immersion at all. Where did this come from? In addition, the sets have the same level of detail that I'm honestly not sure what's real and what's added in post-production half the time. Good editing with historical shows like this one should be invisible, and Murdoch Mysteries definitely has that down pat. The show was filmed all over Canada, primarily in Toronto, so for all I know, there may not even be all that much green screening and CG involved at all. The visible effects used and the props used appear to be mostly practical, with small pieces of CG here and there that likely wouldn't be noticed by the average viewer. I mean, something as simple as eating Chinese food or walking can be made of multiple takes stitched together, so really, what do I know just by viewing this without seeing any of the behind-the-scenes stuff? Regardless, the production is not only historically accurate, but polished in its presentation. In addition, the world itself is just so immersive. Not just Toronto, but every town or city our main characters visit feels like it really does exist. Or at least did at one point, I suppose.
But I suppose it would be does exist, since all the buildings and the sets still exist. But it would be would exist, since it was set way back in the past. But there's also all this immersion-breaking technology, which I'll also get to later, such as the existence of a television being built, an ultraviolet light, and a robot. Is this an alternate universe? Are we eventually going to experience the multiverse of Murdochs? If so, what's the Murdoch in our timeline potentially like? How did that all play out? This raises so many questions!
Let's talk about the mail. Can we talk about the mail, please, Mac? I'm dying to talk about the mail with you all day, okay?
Anyways, back on topic. Everything from the colors and the architecture to the flourishes in each design, it's simply marvelous to look at. I mean, yeah, there are times when it breaks immersion, like that time Murdoch helped create a television 25 years or so before it was supposed to be made, or that time that the Prussians allegedly built a robot. Yeah, with an otherwise pretty historically accurate show, they decided, hey, let's Iron Giant this son of a gun! Okay, but kidding aside, this at least looks the part of being ripped out of history most of the time. 9 times out of 10, remains consistent. And as a subsection of this, because I couldn't quite figure out where else to put it, let's touch on the action and how it looks. Now, while the mysteries are the main focus, there have been fights and chase scenes as well in the third act of many of the episodes that act as kind of a final hurrah for the villain, as well as a test for the heroes. As opposed to the plot lines, which I'll get to in a second, the action can detract from the episode overall, where the mystery and mind games are supposed to be the main focus. I mean, I suppose it's better to try and fail than to not try and disappoint, but the action, or at least the attempts at action, kind of vary in quality to the point where it feels like almost a pinball game of quality if you're jumping all over the place in the series, kind of like I am, admittedly. Bad, good, good, good. Bad, 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 bad. Mediocre, 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 bad, 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 good, 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 bad, good, mediocre, mediocre, bad. As an example of how poorly executed the action can be, there was this one time in Season 10, Episode 9, I think it was. There was this fight with katanas between Breckenreed and a rapscallion called the Lurker. A sword fight in concept should be fun, and the fact that the swords in questions were katanas, as foreshadowed earlier in the episodes, kinda ups the cool factor there. Ignoring that katanas are killing weapons instead of dueling weapons, but Metal Gear Rising fans must have their day, I suppose. But instead of going the route of memory's broken, the truth goes unspoken, I've even forgotten my name, we got this. A piece of overly simple swordplay, obscured by the shelves partially, that makes Darth Vader versus Obi-Wan look like Rengoku versus Akaza. As a swordplay geek, I am now mildly irked that I've had to make that comparison. Apologies for taking so long on that, but the point is, the show's attempts at actions tend to suffer because the action is never really the focus, and as such, I suppose there's not really a lot of time or effort put into them as opposed to the mysteries and everything else. But when they attempt action like this, it tends to fall flat, whether it be lackluster choreography or just the awkward angle of the camera at points, I suppose. But either way, the action can help, but it kind of tends to detract. Anyways, sorry for taking so long on that. But to end off this subsection, the chase scenes are where the show's action really shines. Because it not only uses the setting to its advantage in every chase, whether it be along rooftops, the streets, or through a forest, the setting in each case is used to its fullest extent as the chase continues. As a result, they work better, and you feel more intensity from each twist and turn the chase takes, as the suspect is never too far off. As such, the tension is kind of heightened there. Overall, the action is hit or miss, with the hits being good and the misses being abysmal. So, it's alright. Eternals out of 10. And with all that out of the way, the characters are what defines any piece of media. So to be a truly great show, you need to have great characters. And from the ones you like, to the ones you don't like, to the ones you loathe with a burning passion, this series has a lot of them. As such, let's go over the main cast and just kind of brush over every one of the side characters. Starting with our titular character, Detective William Murdoch. He's kind of a complex character, though you wouldn't really know it on the surface. He's focused and intelligent, yet he can be emotional at times and takes time to spend with his friends and loved ones. Besides being more imaginative than almost everyone else around him, he's also loyal, nearly to a fault, but he also won't let his own feelings get in the way of the evidence. His wife, Julia, is much the same, yet she lacks the same level of imagination and looks at everything through the lens of a scientist, and that can sometimes be to her own detriment. Next is Inspector Breckenreed, a patriot with a Eastern Hemisphere accent, there we go. He's entertaining, and his gruff and semi-pessimistic attitude does well to offset the other characters' optimism, and he kind of presents a more grounded approach to things. And yet, despite the hardness of his main demeanor, he has a softer side that comes out around his friends and family, though he isn't afraid to get tough on them either. The right-hand man of this show, and nearly everybody involved, is George Crabtree, a delightfully innocent and trusting fellow who always tries his hardest even when he knows it won't end well. As a funny side note, he's also lost a lot of women who are into him, arguably the most in the entire show. He's more imaginative than even Murdoch, so that should really tell you something. And that often helps with whatever case they're working on where he plays a role. He adds a blend of innocence and honesty to the show that otherwise would be missing. The final character I'll briefly discuss is Lou Allen Watts, and he is a much different beast compared to the other main cast members. While I do enjoy any character who reminds me of Jim Carrey, Watts is always there with his weird and wacky mannerisms. He's a much more recent character, being added to the main cast in Season 10, but at the same time, he's a very welcome addition. Watts is erratic, and he lacks a verbal filter, not to mention he twitches around like some kind of addict at parts, but that's part of what makes him fit the role of comic relief and a partial foil to Murdoch. Not to mention he's a capable detective as well, and he pulls this off all at once, so props to the actor for that, I suppose. That's just the main characters though, and there are so many coming in and around the constabulary through the revolving door of murder. And as a result, you don't really get to spend a whole lot of time with them beyond one episode, with only a handful of exceptions I can think of off the top of my head. I recall hearing somewhere that you need to hear someone's name 7 times before you actually remember them. But with people's names being thrown around everywhere in this show, the only reason I remember the main cast is because they stick around for more than one episode. I don't devote enough brain power to solving the mystery as a result because I'm too busy trying to remember who everyone is. Like, who's this guy? Like, is he the suspect? Is he the brother of the victim? Is he the victim? Sort out some names, please, people. And I know, for it to be an enticing mystery, there needs to be a decently wide range of suspects. And thankfully they tend to keep it between 6 and 4. But at the same time, unless they're recurring characters, I'm not going to remember them. For example, the only reason I know the Newsomes or Louise Cherry, may her bag ever contain a scorpion, is because they show up multiple times and are memorable as a result, even if for the wrong reasons. But in the end, I suspect that's the point, to let us move on easier from mystery to mystery. Still, it would be nice if they gave the new characters a little bit of breathing room because there's such a variety of them. As a side note, this show also features many appearances of historical figures, with Mark Twain, Nikola Tesla, and Alexander Graham Bell coming readily to mind. And for what it's worth, they are entertaining enough. Maybe it's because I haven't done any research on any of them, really, but these people are pretty well done in the show. Okay, side note over.
But I have more important things to do.
So, the main characters are very well done and feel like actual relatable people with strengths and weaknesses, while the unique characters are a mixed bag and are often forgotten after the episode in which they appear, so overall the characters are well done. But what are characters without their actions? The plot of Murdoch Mysteries is a complex beast, though it doesn't immediately appear that way. The titular mystery is generally self-contained, meaning that a viewer can tune in at almost any time and get the gist of what's going on. However, due to the episodic nature of the murder plots, there are overarching stories that sometimes take place across the entire season. And generally, they receive the same amount of focus within the given episode, sometimes taking place over the entire season. With the show juggling these A, B, and C plots left, right, and center, a lesser show would croak under the weight of combining all of these elements. Fortunately, the pacing of each show is very well handled within the episode, to the point that it makes sure, just barely, that it doesn't overwhelm anyone with too many details at once to keep track of. As an example, one of the overarching plots of season 12 was Murdoch and Julia writing a book on quote-unquote modern investigative techniques. It was added into many of the episodes and was given a good amount of focus, but it never felt like it detracted from the murders and other crimes that took place in the given episode. But what about the namesake, Em? What about the murders? Well, straw man I created solely to make this joke, I will gladly tell you exactly what I think of the murders as soon as I figure out where this hat keeps coming from! The mysteries themselves are intricate and detailed, with subtle clues sprinkled in. But you could also argue that they're too subtle. Most of the time, based on what I've seen, it all comes down to something subtle, usually outside of one of the main suspects. So sometimes it can seem like a conclusion comes right the heck out of left field. But, on the other hand, it really makes you pay attention to the smallest details, and over time you begin to pick up on the small details as well. Even when you're someone like me who devotes way too much brain power to trying to keep everybody's names and faces straight when they're new to the episode. Seriously, the only reason I remember Louise Cherry at all is because she makes Voldemort look friendly. That being said, most of the murders committed are still within the bounds of historical accuracy, but at the same time, it still somehow remains creative and keeps you guessing who the heck the killer is at every turn. The plot lines as well are pretty well written, as self-contained episodes and as overarching plots. So they can vary in quality, but the quality usually flows between a 4 out of 10 to a 9 out of 10. Even the least good of the episodes have something of value to be found in them. The mysteries and subplots overall are super well written, with twists and turns that I can never really see coming for some blasted reason. So let's briefly touch on the theme song for a moment, as it hasn't really changed between each following season. As such, it kinda emphasizes that whatever season you're in, it doesn't really matter, so long as you're jumping into the show and having fun with it. That being said, the intro itself is done very well. It has this sort of air of mystery to it, with the dark lighting and kind of the sepia tones in all of the visible objects, even the picture of Murdoch himself that kind of fades into the background there. What it lacks in visual storytelling, it makes up for in atmosphere and tone setting. So, overall, I'd give the intro about a 7 out of 10. Give or take. It doesn't do every single thing that an intro should do, but what it does do, it does very well. Alright, interruption over. Time to get back to the review. Murdoch Mysteries is a brilliantly made show that looks like it was ripped straight from the pages of history. There were a couple of aspects of the show that didn't get touched on in this video, but if I'm being honest, if I went into every single aspect of the show, I would be here all day. The characters are likable, mostly, and the costumes and sets only add to the show's historical accuracy. And if I'm being honest, the stories told here are very well told with a natural progression. But at the same time, while trying new things can be good, some of the little aspects fall flat, and I can't quite overlook those. So, taking everything into account, I'm giving this show an 8.5 out of 10, with the Green Screen Entertainment seal of binging.
John, I require quality.
Not perfect, but no piece of media is, and the show definitely gets close in a few aspects. The only things that I could really complain about were action-related, and when that's my only complaint about a show centering around mysteries, I'd say it's a good show. Frankly, Murdoch Mysteries earns itself its high ranking for me. But what do you guys think? Let me know in the comments below. Subscribe and share this video around if you like, and yeah, that's really all I've got for today. So, this has been M from the Green Screen. Have a nice day, everybody, and hopefully by next time I'll have gotten rid of this hat.